Welcome back to the Hill Update. I'm your host, Dean Allison, Member of Parliament for Niagara West. Joining me on the show today is Franco Terrazzano, who's the Federal Director for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. So, Franco, the last segment we talked about carbon taxes. Now I want to switch to a new capital tax, which is a capital gains tax that they've changed the rate on. Let's look at this video first, and then I want to get your thoughts.
Mr. Speaker, Liz Diachin is not among those wealthy 1%. The member just described. She has a pension of probably, I'm guessing, $45,000 a year. She's a grandmother who's simply trying to sever off a few lots so that her kids and her grandkids can have a place to live. Those lots have enough value that they will be hit by capital gains tax, and they're over $250,000. So she will pay this, the 66% tax. So very simple question. Will the minister amend the law so that this wonderful grandmother does not have to pay higher taxes?
Okay, so initially the government came out and said this increase would only affect 0.13% of the population. So now what we're hearing experts say, that number is probably likely more like 1 in 4 or 25%. So this tax increase is also going to hurt the middle class and those that are working hard to join it. So how does the increase in the capital gains tax affect regular citizens?
Well, it's really bad, right? So especially for people who do not work in the government and don't get a government pension, well, like how many people work their whole lives to start a family business and then rely on the sale of that business as a nest egg to fund their golden years or to help their kids eventually buy a home? Well, the capital gains tax hike will hurt them. A great example that we've heard in the media for weeks now is coming from doctors. Well, the government is using this capital gains tax increase to go after doctors who have been, saving for the retirement after saving lives their entire careers. But it's also going to hurt people's kids and grandkids. So for example, like think about that young, smart tech graduate from, the University of Calgary, University of Waterloo. Well, the capital gains tax hike is going to encourage that young, smart tech entrepreneur to leave Canada and take the jobs and investment with them. And, not only that, but I have to make the point here. This government does not deserve a single penny more from any Canadian taxpayer. And with the government running a massive $40 billion deficit, even after this tax hike, it's a good bet that if the Trudeau government gets away with this tax increase, they'll keep looking for new ways to take more money from more Canadians.
You did mention small businesses and the fact that they don't have government pensions. And so at the end of the day, this is one of those mechanisms to use for saving. Just expand on that a little bit more. I mean, you talked about the tech, and you're right. If they're being offered stock options in a place like, say, California, this young, smart talent is going to go elsewhere, all things being considered. This is really going to affect our competitiveness, I'm guessing, as well.
Oh, yeah, it's another blow to the Canadian economy, right? And when you're talking about people who are in the private sector who are saving up for their retirements, well, they rely on the sale of these types of assets, whether they own a couple properties, whether they are just relying on the sale of their family business. You've even heard of farmers saying that this will impact the generational transfer of the family farm. So in many ways, this will impact the Canadian economy, but more to the point, Canadians and their families. And let's also remember the context here, right? You hear Mr. Trudeau, you hear Freeland saying that they want the rich to pay more. Well, how about you just make rich multinational corporations pay for their own factories rather than going after Canadian family businesses who are just trying to save for their retirement?
I guess my question is, how could they get this so wrong in terms of coming out with a number that was like 0.3%, and we know not even in the ballpark of what it affects? I guess, did they not really do the math or go all the way downstream to realize just how far-reaching this could be for Canadians?
Well, they're trying to spin Canadians on many different fronts, right? On that specific front, what they're leaving out is that different people register different capital gains in different years. It's not the same people who are always registering a capital gains. But wait, there's more spin, right? Freeland says she's putting in this tax increase for the next generation, so they're not saddled with debt. Well, isn't that funny, folks? Because as of this year, the Trudeau government will have officially doubled the entire national debt, and his Canadians' kids and grandkids will be making payments on that debt for the rest of their lives. Also, one more point of government spin. This is not about tax fairness. If this was simply about restructuring the tax system, then somebody's taxes would be going down. But for most Canadians, taxes are only going up.
Well, you make some great points there. And when we come back from break, let's talk about the other side of that equation in terms of waste. Once again, if they say, well, what would you cut? I think there's probably a few examples you can give us when we come back from break. When we come back from break, let's talk a bit about government waste.